Yeah, the session is live. You can now start.
Good morning, everyone. I, Tridha, welcome you all to today's session. AWS User Group Dehradun brings you an enlightening and fun learning opportunity as we proceed with the second session of our AWS Cloud Practitioner Training, and we present before you a plethora of certification, practices, and exams to choose from, and increase, enhance, and test your knowledge, skills, and aptitude. I hope many of you have already attended the previous session of this training, so you must be knowing Mr. Sanchit. For those who haven't, let me introduce. Mr. Sanchit is a guaranteed AWS master and APN ambassador. He will mentor and guide you through this journey of learning. He has been involved in more than 6 editions of values, conceptualizing the planning and building of applications delivered on AWS and delivery of properly designed designs. He has a sound knowledge of most AWS administration and is widely involved in setting up a protected deployment phase in AWS using Foundation as code. Mr. Sanchit is AWS certified in various fields. Amongst his various achievements, few are his AWS certifications in data analytics specialty, database specialty, DevOps engineer, professional DOP, developer associate, SysOps administrator associate, big data specialty, solution architect associate, solution architect professional. All these are AWS certification which Mr. Sanchit has earned. We are pleased to have you here, Sanchit. Over to you.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Thank you, User Group Dehradun. Thank you, everyone, for joining this wonderful session on Sunday morning. I know it's pretty difficult on weekend. You only have 2 days of weekend, and you have been asked on the Sunday also to be there and to learn and grow. But I'll ensure that this is a fun-loving session, and we all have a good learning here, whatever time we are here on this group. Thank you so much, guys, for organizing this session. It's really wonderful working with you guys for the second time again. So it's as Frida mentioned about my certifications and journey. It's not that been difficult how it sounds. It's pretty easy if you follow the right track, if you have right mentors and right guidance. It's easy to nail all the certifications, right? And with that vision only, we have started helping you guys to earn a cloud practitioner certification. Where in the last session we talk about the foundational, I would say, the ground zero or the introduction to AWS cloud computing. I might see that there are many new faces in this today's session. So I will quickly recap what we have done before we kickstart the session 2 for today. In the last session, we'd spoken about the introduction to cloud computing, the introduction to AWS, as well as a couple of other AWS services across different pillars. Need not to worry about it. If you have missed my session, the video recording is already there on the user group, as well as the documentation is already there in the same GitHub repo where I will be uploading my today's session presentation. So you can follow those as a notes. I can ensure I've tried my best to cover all the documentation, but still, it's like a universe. I've tried to cover a few of the droplets from that universe. If you still feel that you need to gain more knowledge, deep dive into particular services, the best way is go through the AWS documentation of those services. But I've tried my best to cover as much as possible for the Cloud Practitioner certification. Hope you guys learn whatever we are going through it. And please let me know if you have any questions. The comment section is freely open. So please post your comments there. As and when I get a chance, I'll go through it and I'll answer all of your questions. Okay? Does it sound interesting to you guys?
It sounds interesting to me.
Cool. So we all know that we are here for Cloud Practitioner Year. I'll directly jump to agenda. Today's agenda, we will be covering the services in deep dive mode, which is S3, EC2, IAM, and billing. I would say these are the core fundamental services which you will need in and out once you have done with the foundational part of it or the introduction to AWS. These are the services you will work in and out. Like what is S3, which is very well known in AWS ecosystem about S3, a backbone, I would say, of all the AWS services, most of the AWS services. EC2, which starts your compute journey. The IAM, which starts your entire security and permission journey. And cost and billing, which we all know is very important as we start working on AWS. So that's what today's focus. The focus will be the services.
Yeah, hi Sanchit. Sorry to interrupt you. Your screen is not visible.
Thanks for that reminder. Just okay. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, visible now.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, as I was talking about, we'll go through S3, which is like a backbone of most of the AWS services and widely used services, even though it's very simple, but I would say widely used services in all the applications. Then we'll talk about the EC2. We'll start your compute journey in AWS. The IAM, which is very core to any of your security permissions and all. And at the last, the billing and the cost management, which is very important that you understand the nuances of the pricing standpoint of each and every services. So that's what we have in today's session. It looks simple, but it's not that. It's very detailed. So we'll start our journey with AWS S3, right? Now, in case of S3, for sure, I've tried to cover up all the knowledge, as I mentioned, from all the documentation, but I'll try to give you more narration to your real-life example rather than the theoretical definition, so you can connect the dots, what exactly these services are up to. So when it comes to S3, now S3, it means a simple storage service. Now, from the name itself, simple storage service, that is very easy to understand. This is something related to do a storage. Now, for a very simple example, all of you guys have either used a pen drive, either use a Google Drive, or either you would have used some sort of a hard disk, right? That's the same is the concept of S3. You consider it that either you are leveraging a pen drive or a hard disk or some sort of a Google Drive or some sort of a network drive on an AWS ecosystem. That's exact simple way to understand a S3. I would say that's a basic definition to understand how exactly S3. The beauty part of S3, what AWS provides is infinite scaling. That means AWS let us know is even if you have 5 terabytes of data, which is almost 5,000 GB of data, which can constitute like almost like your hundreds of different movies roughly, still it can easily hold in S3 without any sorts of performance lag. That's the beauty of it. I won't say when you have a capacity limit in your pen drive, in your hard disk, even in your Google Drive, even in your network file storage. It will vary from 100 GB, 10 GB to 100 GB to 1 terabyte or even 5 terabyte. But no one can tell you, can you store like 100 terabytes of data in S3? That's not provided, right? It might be possible by consolidating a couple of devices, but where you have to chain different hardwares and do all sorts of operational maintenance. S3 simplify that's very easily, and you have to access it as similar as like how you access your Google Drive. You just have different clicks, upload it, and you're all good. So that's exactly the fundamental or the introduction I would say about S3. It's a storage service, infinite scaling, and you can store up to terabytes of data. These are the 3 points you have to remember when it comes to S3. Now, for sure, when Amazon provides such kinds of beauty service which can scale as per the storage requirement, for sure, Amazon also internally will be promoting that services as a foundational storage for all of their services. That's what is the second point. Many websites uses Amazon S3 as a backbone. Even many AWS services uses Amazon S3 as an integration as well. So not just as a storage perspective, as an integration, even to host some static websites, you can use S3, which we will see how to do that static hosting and all in upcoming at the end of this particular section. But just do remember that S3 is storage as well as also provides a backbone to a couple of other websites and AWS services. Now let's understand how exactly the things have been stored in S3, which is also very simple and works in and out how you work in your traditional work. Like in your laptop, desktop, anywhere in the storage, what you do is you create your folder. Why you create a folder? So you can organize all of your content within that folder. Exactly. That parent folder in AWS S3 is called as a bucket. Bucket is your reserve section where underneath you can store the object. So that is a bucket, which is nothing but your main parent folder root directory, what we generally call, is nothing but a bucket. Then underneath that root folder, how do you segregate? Like different subject wise you do it, different category wise you do it, or different, let's say, interest wise you segregate or draw out a hierarchy via subfolders. Similarly, in S3 also, we create via different hierarchies. You can create different subfolders in it. And within that subfolder, you can store the different files. Now in S3, it's on you if you want to create the folders. If you don't want to create, it's completely on you. It's completely optional. But there are two things. One is the S3 bucket, which is like the parent folder. The second is the S3 object. Now, what exactly the object means is anything which you store in S3, whether you store a JPEG file, whether you store as a CSV, whether you store as a TXT file, or whether you store any sorts of multimedia. End of the day, everything comes as one generic category, which is called as an object. So there are another way also people mention is S3 is an object-based storage. That's another way to remember, because why it is called as an object-based storage, because everything in S3, whether it's multimedia, whether it's any sort of simple file, whether in any sort of executable, everything is stored as an object. That's why S3 is called as an object storage. Now, those are the two things you remember about outside the foundational definition of S3. S3 consists of a bucket, which is like a parent folder, and an object, which is like a file, which is like anything of directory which you store. Now, let's understand quickly now how exactly you need to name, right? So first of all, important point you need to understand is this point. The bucket must be globally unique. What that means is, for an example, let's say I create a bucket which is called as demo-AWS. Now, let's say I create that bucket in my one of the account, let's say account A. Does that mean can I deploy or can I create a new bucket with a similar name in another account B? In let's say one I've created in US East, second let's say I'm creating in AP South, which is Mumbai. That's not possible. It is across the world globally unique. So that even means, let's say some of your other colleagues or some XYZ person, let's say in Canada, has created a demo-AWS, still I will not able to reserve that particular bucket name. So it's globally unique across the region, across the entire globe. So that's why you will see many a times when you try to create a bucket name, you will get an error. Bucket name already exists. But that doesn't mean that name exists in your account. That means that name exists across the globe, across the entire AWS in any of the region, because it's a global service. So do remember that. It's a very important point. The second name, when you create a bucket, you always feel like that when you're creating a bucket, you always, when you ask to select a region, like it's like an AP South, and don't worry about it. You just need to remember it. We'll do a demo when you will go through that very detail. So bucket name are defined at a regional level. So as I mentioned, now I told you the same thing, right? That, okay, hey, the bucket name is globally unique. But when you define a bucket, the bucket is defined as a regional level, even though the registry of all the bucket name is stored at the global level. So don't get confused at it. The bucket are defined at the regional level. The S3 looks like a global service, but buckets are created in a region and the names are globally unique. Okay. And there are certain naming conventions like no uppercase, no underscore. It should be minimum 3 character to 63 character long. It should not be an IP address. Must start with a lowercase letter or number. No need to remember or mug up all those things. It's just the basic understanding that everything has to be lowercase. You cannot use certain attributes like IP addresses or underscore and those kinds of stuff, which is very simple. Okay, so that's more about your S3 bucket. Next, we will understand about the S3 object. Now, S3 object we talk about is like the similar thing, that it's like a file. And the file, the full path somewhere of the file will be like this. The S3, then this is like similar like how you can have any sort of a protocol or any sorts of like HTTPS://. So here it is, S3 is like a protocol. This is your bucket name. This is your folder. This is another folder. And let's say this is my file. So this is how the entire URL will be. Now URL is simple, that what you have Amazon.in. That's an URL, friendly URL. Similarly, this is also another kind of an URL. This URL will be helpful when you're doing and hosting a kind of a static website, or you want to access any object which is stored in a location from some other program. Let's say you launch an EC2 instance where you want to download a file from an S3 bucket. There exactly this path will help you there. This is called as S3 URI, not URL. In S3, in AWS ecosystem, this is called as unique resource identifier, not locator. So that's this one. The second is around, there is one recommendation what AWS has. As I mentioned, AWS is very fully scalable. Infinite scaling is what they promote. What AWS mentioned is we'll support everything for you. We can also store 500 terabytes for you. But we will recommend this. If you go beyond 5 GB, please use multi-part upload. Multi-part is nothing but a threading upload, that you chunk your entire total file size and then you thread it and store it individually in a form of a chunk. There are multiple reasons of doing that. One, for sure, now you're going to, however faster internet you have of Gbps, if you're going to store like 5 terabytes or even let's say 100 GB of data, it's going to give you a performance lag. That's pretty obvious. Second, even if it got break, the entire thing you need to continue. So with those couple of network related issues, AWS always recommend that you leverage the scalability functionality of S3 and you try to leverage multi-part upload there. So that's why remember multi-part, that anything which is storing 5 GB more than that, AWS recommend to use multi-part upload. And there are other things like you can have metadata, you can have tags, you can have versions, those kinds of stuff. Now it is very important to remember like a tag and the metadata, right? The metadata is like your kind of an additional attributes what you can give, and tags are like kind of useful for security and any sorts of life cycle kind of a stuff. Like metadata can be you describe that, okay, this file is let's say XYZ kind of blah, 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 blah. And tags is like, okay, owner Sanchit, let's say environment prod. So those kinds of very specific key value kind of a stuff. And metadata is like a list of text and key value, those kinds of multiple description you can give. So that's about S3 bucket and S3 object. Two more important things, which is about the S3 durability and availability. As I mentioned, AWS mentioned S3 is very infinite scaling, as infinite storage as well as infinite scaling. It supports 9 11s. So you don't need to mug up it, but 9 11s of high durability. It simple means an almost impossible kind of a failure when it comes to S3 and you're going to lose your object. They have given a kind of a numeric example also, that if you store, let's say somewhere around like 1 crore some different objects in S3 over 10,000 different years, there is a probability that you might lose one object every 1/10,000 of a years, which don't need to remember. But if someone wants to really understand to the core what this 11.9 means, that's why I've given this example. But for you, the simple means, in simple statement, it's very highly durable and highly available. How much it is durable? 11 nines. That's it. That's simple. You don't need to go into those details, but for your some high level understanding, this exactly it means. And this is same for all the classes. Now, what you mean by classes is what we'll see in upcoming slide, but this is exactly the same for all the classes. All the classes of S3 storage which is provided. Next is the availability. Availability, that means how much available the AWS S3 will be to everyone. So readily available as a service. Whenever you launch a new AWS account, this service is by default comes as ready, and it offers 4 nines, 99.99, which means it's not available 53 minutes a year, which is completely fine. Like it's, I would say, honestly speaking, I've in my entire life, I've working in 6 years almost in AWS, I've seen like once or twice kind of where S3 was completely down. I mean, one was the biggest scenario where I've seen that the entire North Virginia S3 was down. The rest I've seen that everything was manageable within like an hour or so. So nothing was like completely disaster kind of a scenario. And if it is, then it's already been mentioned that you use a kind of a multi-regional kind of a stuff. But I never seen that completely S3 going down. It may be specific to one region, but completely going down, that's not possible. And it depend on different storage classes. The availability is highly depends on the different storage classes. Okay. So here are the couple of points when it comes to the introduction. Now, let's understand the different S3 features. S3 static website, any sorts of static website which you have, like you create a different single page website for any sorts of a college fest or any sorts of, let's say, job posting, those kinds of stuff. It becomes very difficult. You need to host a server, you need to install a web server in it, you need to, I mean, for sure, you need to write the code. I mean, no one is going to help you with that. But there are other things what you need to do outside writing the code. AWS S3 simplifies this completely, which you will understand. Like it's like, I would say 5 to 6 clicks, which you need to do. One policy you need to add, upload your code, and it will work fine. And it's exactly the same. And it's, the best thing is it's highly scalable. You don't even need to worry about it. Even if let's say 1 millionth of user try to access your website at one given point of time, at a fraction of second, still it is going to be highly available. It's not going to crash. So that's about static website. Versioning. All of this audience, I understand, have somewhere use something like code, GitHub for code management. Even if you have not used GitHub, let's say someone is very new to the entire IT industry, you would have used something like a different document version 2.0, version 3.0. In the operating system also, in your mobile also, you will see OS 15.0 or 15.1, right? It's a different version, incremental version what you have. Similarly, in S3 also, you can create different versions of your same object. The idea is pretty simple. If you want to backtrack, if you want to go back and understand which was the previous version, if you need a history, if you need to have compliances, XYZ, the reason is you have that capability to do that. The next point is the access log. It's pretty simple. All things what you log, all things what you try to access on S3, whether it's a read operation, write operation, delete, failure to read, right? All those get logged, so you can store it, you can identify it for any sorts of future references. The last one is the replication. Replication simply means backing up the data to some other bucket. Now that bucket can be in the same region, in the another cross region, or in another account. Doesn't matter, wherever it is storing. Let's say, for example, what I mean is I have a bucket which is in North Virginia in account A. Similarly, I want to back it up to another account in same region, North Virginia. So even though that bucket is another account, I can do it as an SRR, just simple same region replication. Or if within the same account A, one bucket is in North Virginia, the second is, let's say, in California or in Mumbai, I can do a cross-region replication. So irrespective whether the bucket is in same account or in different account, doesn't matter. You can replicate your data across the region or within the same region. And also, it doesn't matter. When I say replication, one of the people certain who have some experience will think, hey, if this replication is a continuous, it might give a performance impact. No, not at all, because copy operation is asynchronous in nature, which means it runs in the background. It's not going to be real time. So let's say one operation, your Lambda or EC2 is trying to read the entire file, and this S3 is trying to copy the file. The copy operation is completely asynchronous and backup in nature versus what EC2 is trying to read. So there is no sorts of performance impact what you have. So that's about the features. Next, as I mentioned in the previous slide also, about the storage classes, right? So AWS provides 6 different storage classes based on different needs, understanding, and all. I've tried to give this entire diagram, here, so you don't have to go through different documentations. I'll skip this particular block here because it's very detailed out. Very simple. What we are going to do is we'll understand this, what exactly this storage layer means, and what exactly the significance is across each 6 of them, which will some indirectly will be able to understand this table from here. But don't try to mark this entire table. It's not required. If you have this understanding on the left-hand side, it's more than suffice. So the first one, what you have is Amazon S3. S3 standard general purpose. That means it's a general by default what you've been provided. You can use frequent access data, low latency, high throughput. This is like a by default what you get, which provides the best in class functionality what you get. So very simple example for this one is when you install any software, there is always an option which is called as recommended. All the folks who, most of the people, you would be using a Windows, right? In Windows, when you see one is on customize, one you can just make some changes and do it, customize the option. And second, at the last, you see a recommended one, full install recommended, which means like a quick mode kind of a thing. This is S3 standard general purpose, like a quick mode recommended kind of a thing, which provides you best in class functionality of S3 at high frequency data access, low latency, high throughput, those kinds of stuff. The second one is the Amazon S3 intelligent tiering. Now, this is the S3, the same as what you get in the S3 standard, the above one. But it provides you some sort of a cost optimization by automatically switching the object based on your access pattern. Frequent access and infrequent access. Simple, it means, let's say you have two files in a bucket. Let's say you are frequently accessing it. One is you're not accessing it, you're accessing it once in 6 months, once in a year. Based on the type, how you're accessing it, it will automatically do a tiering of it. And this is how it will save the cost. Okay, so that means an intelligent tiering. It's smart enough to understand, to analyze your access pattern and take a call based on that access pattern. The second one is infrequent access. Now, infrequent access, the name itself is very simple to understand. Any data which you are not frequently accessing it, but you may need it And when you need it very spontaneously. Let's say, for example, there are certain files which you store. Very simple of it. You have your different mark sheets, right? Different grades of your 10 standards, of your 12 standards, or different entrance exam. When you're going to need it, either for registering some exams or to take some admissions. But when you need it very spontaneous. I need it like ASAP in 5 minutes. But if I don't need it, I'm not even going to use it for 6 months. That's the best example here. If I need it, I will need it in 5 minutes, and I need it multiple times ASAP. If I don't need it, I'm not even going to use it. So that's like an infrequent access. The second one is the same one zone infrequent access. That means ideally AWS, as I mentioned about the availability. Availability means it replicates internally also. AWS replicates and store the data into multiple availability zones. If we see here in this table in row number 4, you will see there are different numbers are there of different availability zone. Like let's say US East 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, those kinds of different availability zone, which is like a different data centers. Internally also, AWS protects your data by replicating it. Ideally, at max, it stores into greater than equivalent to 3 availability zones. But in one tier or one zone, that means it's only going to store in one availability zone. That means this, I'll give you the example also when you should use it, but just remember it that it's going to store in one availability zone. That means that data, even if it gets lost due to some failure or on, it's not that very important. You have the backup some other way. The second two ones is a Glacier and Glacier Deep Archive. Both Glacier and Glacier Deep Archive, for simplicity, understand it's more like a backup, archival. Like how you do WinZip, WinR, and then you store it somewhere, you dump it in your desktop. Similarly, it's more like a Glacier kind of a stuff. Now, for a simple, you have text filing, your IT written filing, your parents would be having it, if your elder brother would be having it. They store that results, right? I mean, generally we do have a hard copy or soft copy. They store it. When they store it, generally they store it in Google Drive. They store it in, let's say, hard copy in some sort of a folder or cabinet, because they might need it, let's say, 4 years down the line, 7 years down the line, as a part of the compliance or auditing report. Those kinds of document what you can store here. Now, this is the very cheapest, I would say, the cost, both of them compared to the above option. Why? Is because you store this cost, you store all this file into some sort of a Glacier in deep archive mode. But the problem here is when you want to retrieve it, it's not going to offer you the same speed of retrieval which the other options are giving you. The retrievals will be in R. That, okay, you tell them that, okay, I need this document, and let's say the retrieval will be in, let's say, in 7 hours, 12 hours, 4 hours. Those kinds of retrieval it will be. For Glacier, it's somewhere around 3 to 4 hours is there. And for deep Glacier, it is 12 hours. What that means is, if I have archived any of my file in Glacier, from Amazon Glacier, I can get that file after 4 hours. From deep Glacier, I will get after 12 hours. That means that Glacier is still, the cost is higher compared to the deep Glacier. The deep Glacier is cheapest in all the remaining 5 categories, and Glacier is the second one followed up it, because they provide you the less availability or the less access data pattern of it. So that's about the all 6 kind of stuff. And same now, if you understand this, all the 6 points, and if you try to read this, it's exactly the same. Will we give you that, as I mentioned, durability is the same. Availability will change. Now, availability you will see is almost same for everyone outside. Majorly, you will see the availability is for infrequent access. The infrequent and intelligent tiering you will see. And the negative, almost the lowest one offered by 1, because we are storing the data in 1 availability zone. Okay. Availability of SLA is directly depend on this, and then you will see that, okay, the standard one provides 99.9. That's why I said it's a best in class what you can get. The deep Glacier and Glacier, I think, as I mentioned, they are also the best in class, but the retrieval rates are slower. And the one from the availability zone, this is what is important for you guys to remember. The availability zone that is less than equal to 3, greater than equal to 3 for almost all the one. For the one zone 1, as the name suggests, it's going to store in one zone. Those are the more critical points when it comes to the storage class. Now, you would ask me a simple question. Hey, it's pretty difficult, right? How do I know which I want to use and what time and other stuff, right? So this is how you can understand from a basic life cycle stuff. Like from a life cycle standpoint, even let's say, initially, if you're not able to implement a different storage class, that no need to worry about it. over a period of time, as you understand it, you can move your object from one storage class to another storage class by defining a lifecycle rules. Like as I mentioned, lifecycle rules is more like how you're going to access your object based on that rules. You can do it. Like for example, after 30 days, you move this file. I need this file, let's say for 30 days in a standard because I have the requirement. After 30 days, I don't need it. So you move this to, let's say, infrequent access, or you move to Glacier. Okay. So very simple, those kinds of different rules you can set up that, okay, after 30 days, if I don't understand it, you can move to this XYZ kind of stuff. So those kinds of different rules, transition rules you can define. This you do not need to mug up, I would say. Just you need to understand that, okay, it is possible that from, here are the couple of transition that's possible, here are the couple of transition that's not possible. The simplest way to remember is that from top to bottom, everything is possible. Like from S3 standard, you can reach out to any of the life cycles, any of the stage. Same goes from a staircase kind of a stuff from top to bottom. Like from standard, you can go to remaining one, from intelligent to remaining one, standard infrequent to remaining one zone, Glacier, and deep archive. You can go to anywhere, right? But reverse is not possible. What that means is from any of the storage class, you cannot go back to the standard one. That's one point. Okay. The second is intelligent storage class to the S3. Now from here, you cannot go back to this one. Nor you can go back to from this to this too. So those kinds of couple of access pattern has been there that, okay, you cannot traverse back from here. Like for sure, you can from S3 Glacier, or from Glacier, you can for sure go back to the anyone. Like outside the standard one, you can go back to any of the classes. But from the intelligent one zone and from here, you cannot go back. So that's what I'm saying. You don't need to mug up this up that, okay, hey, it's very difficult. Just remember it that what exactly the S3 lifecycle is. In simple words, from S3 lifecycle, you define a rule. That rules can help you to move the object from one class to another class to save the cost. And then simple of it, what are the different transitions are there? These are the 6 different transitions, what you can do. And it's like a waterfall model that from top to bottom you can go. Okay. But this is rarely you will need to understand when you're doing a very hands-on that, okay, this is not possible. This is up to you. Will be frequently you should be knowing about in and out about this one. So that's about S3 lifecycle. Now what we will be doing is, as I was talking about the demo from along, we'll go and we'll create a demo. Now, very simple of it for the demo. We are here in the AWS console. I think hope everyone has an AWS account. If not, please feel free to go and launch an AWS account. And if you're not able to do it, please drop me a note in LinkedIn. I'll give you the documentation to do so, how to spin up an AWS account. We'll simply go and search for S3. Hope you can see my console has been loading of S3. Now it's loading the different buckets and all other stuff, right? So as I mentioned, this is exactly the S3 console. And these are the different buckets which I've already launched for my own personal purpose. But this is a console of S3. In order to create an S3 bucket, it's pretty simple. As you can see the name here, create S3 bucket. As I mentioned, when you're creating the bucket name as I must be unique, must not contain space or uppercase. It should start from the lower one. Okay. So AWS So let's say I'm giving this name. Then second thing I mentioned in my theoretical section was that even though the bucket name is globally unique, you define a region. The same is what you're defining a region. This means that block the access setting for this public. This is very important if you're storing any sorts of sensitive data, that it should not allow any sorts of public access, which means anyone from the world can access your data without even you letting know. So that is block. Versioning, we already understand it. You can define the tags, encryption, advanced setting. We will skip all those things and we'll click on the create bucket. Let's see, do we have this bucket available? Awesome. Okay, so I hit the gold in first attempt. I already have the bucket name here. Don't try to use the same bucket name. You're going to get an error. That bucket already exists because I've already reserved this name underneath my account. Now, what I'm going to do is next. So this is my bucket, which I mentioned the parent. Now I'm going to upload the object. So don't worry about it. I will be giving you all the code snippet in the GitHub repo, which I'm using it post this session with the presentation. This is the code which I'm going to use it. So these are the 3 simple HTML files. I'm going to upload this HTML files. Okay. This is called as objects. As I mentioned, this is bucket, this is objects. Now, what we will be doing next, as I mentioned, this is demo is around hosting a static website. I created a bucket, I uploaded my code. Step 3, I'm going to enable static hosting in S3. There are 2 things what you guys need to do. Step 1, first you need to enable the static website. For that, you need to click here, you need to enable. You need to provide certain other things like which is your home page. Now my home page is index.html, which I just uploaded. What is my error page? Error.html. Now you can give any document the name of it, but this is the standard one. I save it. Now do remember, if I try to directly hit one, this is enabled. Now static website is enabled. Now if I directly go and hit this, I will get an 403 error. Correct? That means 403 forbidden, code access denied, access denied. Do remember, if you're getting a 403 forbidden error while hosting a static website, the simple and the only reason is because you haven't configured the right permission to the S3 bucket. So next step, what we will be doing is going to the permission section. And first step is disable the public access because website should be universally available. That means anyone should be publicly accessible the data. Please ensure this as a best practice. The S3 static hosted bucket should be completely separated than your normal bucket. What that means is any sorts of sensitive data should not be stored into the static website bucket. Create a new brand bucket for static website and store and host your website in that. Don't store in your regular buckets where you already have the sensitive data. So we will block, we will uncheck all the access bucket. I'll confirm that. And this will also give me a warning and it's a red message that you have off or disable all those stuff. That's step 1. Step 2, I need to give a policy. Now you will say, hey, I don't know about what policy you're talking about. As I mentioned, you don't have to panic anything out here. So this is a policy. I'll add it and I'll paste. Now you will see the bucket ARN is already given, which I will replace up to this. Do remember /* is much required. So just remember up to the bucket name. You need to provide this /*, otherwise it's going to fail. I'm going to save the changes. Now I'm going to go and simply refresh my page. Tantana, here you go. So your website is up and running. This is a simple website page, what we have hosted on S3. It was as simple as doing these 3 things. Create a bucket, upload your code, enable the static website, and provide the permission. These are the 3 things what you need to do. This is as simple, and I will say 10% what generally you do in your rest of the work. Launch the server, install any sorts of web server in it, upload the code, configure it, provide the URL and the stuff. And this is what, if you access it, anyone in the world can access this website. If you want, you can try to even access this website from your different URL. I'll give it in the chat. I mean, I'll give this URL in the GitHub repo. I'm not able to give this in the chat, or admin, can you, I'm just sending this URL. Can you just post it in the chat comment section, please? So anyone can access this web page as simple as that. If I go to sample page, you will see this is a sample page around it. This is as simple website. And if I try to hit /demo, it will take some time to load because it's caching. You will see an error page by default that, okay, there is an error here. Go back to home And if I go back to home, by default, it points to the index. So this is a demo about hosting in a static website in S3. If you go back to a presentation, here are the steps which I've written. Create an S3 bucket, enable static website, download the code from here, upload the code, and access your static website content over the stuff after giving the permissions and everything. So this is as simple as what we have understood about the S3, the different functionality of S3, and that's how to store the static website on S3. Hope this is very interesting for you and there are no queries about it. I'll take a pause here to see if there are any sorts of questions what you have with respect to S3 before we jump on to the next section. I don't see any questions. Guys, if you have any questions, please post here. Otherwise, I'll start to the EC2 section. Awesome. I think like everyone is pretty clear so far with the pace, what I'm explaining. So I'll jump to the next part. Let me go ahead and yeah, I think there's just now the link has been uploaded. Okay, this is a very good question which I can see now from Prakash. How do we change the domain name of an S3 DNS? That's a very good question, right? I've tried to make it very foundational for this particular audience, but it's a very good question. This is not, I mean, the name what we have given, S3 UG demo static website, S3 website, right? This is not a friendly name. Like you cannot give it as a professional name. There are functionality provided in AWS Route 53. So if you go back into our previous session, which we spoke about under networking as a service, domain DNS service, Route 53, which we called as, you can take this entire mapping, the name, and you can map it under Route 53, and you can give in any sorts of demo, any sorts of DNS what you have, sort of a stuff, right? Those things what you can easily do it, and you can change it and give any sort of friendly name as per your business need and the requirement. So those all things possible. For this demo, I've kept it very simple, but those all things have been by default provided. Also, what you can do right now for a very simple, this URL is not secure. What that means is anyone in the URL, anywhere in the world can access this. As well as if you observe this very granularly, the protocol is HTTP. No one in the world currently uses HTTP. Everyone uses HTTPS. So even if you want to provide this as a secured kind of a URL, you can use CloudFront. So how it works is you have your entire static website, you have a CloudFront on top of it, and on top of CloudFront, you take that CloudFront URL and then you map to Route 53. So you get the entire end-to-end URL with HTTPS and in your own branding. Those all things possible, but those are the more advanced and complex things which you can do now once you understand the basics of it. Any other questions do we have here? Okay, awesome. So I just got a message from someone that, okay, hey, how I can get a student free tier account in AWS. Okay, I will reply you offline. Let me have a look account how we can do it. And also, second thing, I think the question is about the student free tier. One of the things I also want to highlight is Amazon by default provides a free tier option, which has been available that you get certain free tier, certain credits, right? If I go back here in my AWS console and see the billing section, there are by default when you launch a new account, you get a certain sections already as a free tier. You will understand how to do those free tiers and other stuff, where exactly billing and all. From there, you can understand that, okay, how exactly it is. Like for example, see, this is my free tier account. So if I click on view all, you can see these are the all free tiers what I have consumed for this month. So for initial first few months, you will see this all free tiers, those kinds of stuff you can get very easily here. So do remember that even if you don't get a student account, you do not have to worry about it. You can get the free tier by default here. Okay. So now let me jump quickly towards the second part, which is the EC2. We come out of the entire storage world now and move towards the compute part of it. Very simple of it, what exactly EC2 means. EC2 is, in simple words, it's like your compute. Now, compute can be anything. It can be your server, it can be your desktop, it can be your laptop, it can be your iPad, MacBook Pro, MacBook Air, XYZ. Anything which can help you to process something is, in simple, what I would call as a computer, a computing platform or a computing device. Now, what is the significant what AWS provides in form of an EC2, which is Elastic Cloud Computing, is you don't have to worry about how to configure it, how to set up it, how to network it, put it into a LAN, Wi-Fi, router. Those are the common jargons which we are been rounded in and out in our life. You don't have to worry about all the stuff. AWS takes care of entire thing. Only thing you have to worry about it. Deploy your EC2 instance with the right configuration what you need as per your requirement. But you need to get the code, bring your own code or bring your own application what you want to deploy in it, and it's all set what you need to do. So that's very easy what AWS provides. On top of it, AWS also provides cool additional functionality for enterprise scale. Let's say, for example, it's very difficult to predict any sorts of sales, any sorts of the Amazon sale offering or any sorts of offering and all other stuff, right? Like Prime Day and all other stuff. These are very difficult to predict. Whether my website will be hit by thousands of users, whether it's going to be 10,000, whether it's going to be 10 lakh, 1 crore, I don't know about it. But I cannot spin up my infrastructure to a larger extent because it may be reverse of it. It may be either underutilized or it may be overutilized. Then exactly EC2 or AWS also provides things like auto scaling, load balancing. Those are the another way of segregating and building a highly available application. We'll understand all those different things in this particular section. So I'll quickly move towards the next part of it from introduction. But before moving that, very simple of it, as we understood from the introduction, couple of things it provides as a benefits. If we see the easily web scaling, compute control, flexible, integrated, reliable and secure, and less expensive. Most of the other standard offerings, any person who knows cloud computing, these are the standard offerings provided around from the AWS. It's very flexible, it's very scalable, reliable, secured, and controlled. So those are the standard, I would say, cloud computing example. But the best part of AWS EC2 is not only it provides the compute, but it also provides the enterprise additional capabilities for storing the data from auto scaling to load balancing. So these are the basic introduction, I would say, of EC2 instance. Let's jump into the instance type. As I mentioned in the first slide, EC2 is like a compute. And we do understand when we talk about compute, some computes are pretty strong, like a gaming laptop, gaming server, or a deep learning, machine learning. The kind of compute you need is like an extremely high end. Whereas versus you're storing a very simple WordPress site. The kind of gaming or the kind of compute you need is very small. Ideally, in your mobile also, there is some sort of a compute processor is there. The requirement is much more smaller compared to a laptop. So based on the type, based on the requirement, and based on the functionality, the requirement of the compute changes. With that thought process, AWS provides different kinds of instance type as well as instance family. General purpose, if you look here or in this table, it's the same. General purpose, compute optimized, memory optimized, storage optimized, and GPU. Now, along with this are the family, I would say, like how you, in simple way, it's not like apple to apple comparison, but how you have Windows, then you have Linux, you have even different families of it. This is not apple to apple comparison. Don't try to compare it, but just on similar if you for your understanding. Similarly, instance families are more like a general purpose, compute, memory, storage, optimized GPU. Like general purpose is like for everyone day in, day out use. Compute optimizes more for a compute performance, like any sorts of larger processing, data processing kind of thing you need. Memory optimizing, you want to do in-memory kind of a thing, what you need to do. Like you need larger memory requirement and other stuff. Storage is you want to store like large kinds of any sorts of applications and all. GPU, you want to do any sorts of image processing or machine learning or any sorts of gaming there you need it, right? So that's about the high level big category. Within the big category, there are different classes of instance provided. You don't need to worry about it. This instance classes are nothing but a different capacity. Now, when you go in the market to buy a laptop, even though you say that, okay, I need an XYZ brand laptop with XYZ OS, the options are different thing. Like you can get like a 4 GB, you can get an 8 GB, you can get a 16 GB, you can get a 32 GB. There are different compute, I mean, say class have been there based on your requirement. based on the type of the laptop. Similarly, under different general purpose and instance family, AWS also provides a different category of the compute. So this on the right hand side is those different computes what AWS provides, and high level are the instance family on the left. So these are the stuff, and this description is what you have to remember about it, that which instance type you need to use or which kinds of application. As I mentioned, general purpose you can use it widely. Outside the GPU, you can use everything. The performance is very general, very standard, neither very bad, neither very good, very flat line. Compute, if you need to store any sorts of very computing, very algorithmic, very compute sort of stuff where you need the CPU and all, then you should use compute sort of stuff. Memory, generally, if you're doing any sorts of memory kind of stuff, memory you means, as I mentioned in my first lecture also, in AWS, there are two things what you need to remember: memory and storage. Ideally, in a normal life, we interchangeably use this term memory and storage. But in cloud computing, memory always means main memory. Storage always means secondary memory or hard disk. So do remember, when you always see word as memory, it always points to things like RAM. That's exactly the memory. So any application where you always have an intensive, that you read the entire data in main memory and want to process it, like more like a big data and those kinds of Spark application, memory optimize what you use. Storage is where you want to store the larger data, some sort of an archival website or storage content, like content management system kind of a stuff, where you need storage optimized. Then the GPU, pretty obvious. You need NVIDIA like kind of a stuff for any sorts of image processing or gaming experience. AWS also provides different instance type purchase options. Now, there are different options what AWS provides, like 5 of them are there: on-demand, reserve instance, spot instance, dedicated host, and dedicated instance. Those are the 5 different types of instance you have. I will not go deep dive into the stuff in each of from a theoretical perspective. Let me give you an overview. But more important from here to understand is which one you should use at what time based on your requirement. That's more critical to use rather than understanding in very theoretical definition. On-demand standard, always available, will provide you whatever you need, and you pay the second or the normal billing what you have. Reserve, you reserve it for a particular time frame that I'm going to reserve. This is my, I'm going to reserve it for time, and you pay some discounted cost compared to on-demand. Spot, you kind of a bid. If you get it, you are lucky enough, good. If you're not, then sorry, try again next time kind of a stuff. And the cost is 90% discount compared to the on-demand. Dedicated host and dedicated instance. This is two are very important if you want to understand. Dedicated host is simple as you take and dedicated an EC2 server which is fully dedicated to you, which means like in case of, in the background, when you talk about the EC2 instance, EC2 is also nothing but a kind of a fragmented space in the entire rack what AWS has. So in the entire hardware rack, you get a fragmented space of yours. Now that fragmented space is only yours till you have your EC2 instance in a stop state or in a start state. Once you terminate it, you declaim that entire kind of a location. But in dedicated host, even if you declaim, that host is with you. So this way, anything which is like the storage and all the stuff that is with you, that can help you from a compliances purpose. There are certain strict compliances that in industry from tracking perspective, there exactly you can help all this dedicated host. Dedicated instances, you reserve the entire rack. Now, if you see in your colleges or anywhere, if you have seen in the past, there are server rooms are there. In that server rooms, all the servers are dedicated to that particular facility. Like if you see an office, to that, let's say a particular industry, or to that particular facility, that this all servers belongs to me. Similarly in AWS also, this entire, that particular rack, that entire option belongs to me. Now you can launch 15 instances in it across accounts or across different your units, across different departments. Whatever it is, you can easily make any sorts of changes after you start and stop. So those are the difference between dedicated host and dedicated instance. Do remember that. Now let's go to the main point. Like which purchase option is right for me. I'll take a simple example here. On demand is like a simple way to book an Ola. Very simple of it. I have my Ola app in my mobile. Whenever I need, I book my app. The car is at my doorstep. I take a ride, go, pay the bill, done. Neither I am in any sorts of commitment. Neither I am any sorts of stuff. Whenever I need it, I book it. Whenever I need to, when I'm at my destination, I pay the price and move out of it. Neither I need to do any sorts of, worry about, okay, if I'm not even using it, my car is parked in my parking garage. I need to do patrolling and all other stuff. Okay, that is as simple as on demand. The reserve is similar. You would have seen Ola outstation, right? Or Ola reserve, right? Book, where you book for or reserve it for a long time, where you get a more discounted price. Let's say if I want to go from one place to another, I book it that, okay, I need this rental for XYZ period. I need it for 48 hours. When that 48 hours, that vehicle is with you, you take care of entire patrolling and other stuff that inside of Texas and everything. Even the breakdown also, you need to talk to Ola and get all those things, right? Ola is just an example, but any sorts of kind of a car reservation company. So that's exactly the reserve. That, okay, you need to worry about, you're reserving it, even though, I mean, you're not using it, you have to pay for it. Now, let's say once I reach to my destination, I'm just spending a 1 day vacationing it, but still that vehicle is with me. So I'm paying for that even 1 day, even if I'm not using it. So until I don't return it back, I have that with me and I'm making a fixed commitment that I need my vehicle for 48 hours. So that's what the reserve instance. Even if I don't use it, I have to pay for it. That's a kind of a fixed kind of an engagement. Spot is more like a shared cap. Like generally, I have not seen more here, but on the abroad, on the US side of it, you have something called as a shared cap or pool cap, where you say that based on that depends on the availability that someone is driving on that route, there is a vacancy available in that cab, you bid that, okay, hey, this is what I'm going to ready to pay, this much dollar. If the driver accepts your bid, then he will route through your doorstep and drops you at destination. But if something got changed, let's say even you get a bid, if you book a car, that doesn't mean that's 100% safety that you will be able to get a vehicle. Because let's say if the route get changed, if something got changed, the driver can cancel your ride at any time. There is no reliability on top of it. So similarly, kind of a spot instance, that if the bidding price got changed, the instance will be taken away from you. You have to book another one. Dedicated is my own personal car. I have a luxury of my own personal car, which is my dedicated. However I want to run it, I will run it. However I want to customize it, I can customize it. However I want to drive it, I will drive it. It's on my own. So this is the very simple narration, I would say, best example to understand this instance pricing. I don't think this example will be there in any documentation. So remember from this example, if you have this example in your head, above category, it's very simple to translate. You don't need to mug up anything. Okay. So on demand is more like a book a normal cab, drive wherever you want, pay the bill, and you're done. No commitment of it. Reserve is more like commitment. You give an upfront commitment. I'm available for 48 hours or 72 hours. Even if you don't drive it, you have to pay for it. You get a better discount, but you have to pay for it even though if you're not driving it. Spot is more like a shared whole cap kind of a stuff. If there is availability, you will be there. If there is no, you won't get it. And based on if there is some change in the scenario, there is no reliability. You may be kicked out. Dedicated is my own personal car kind of stuff. Okay. Now let's understand the EC2 security part of it. So from a security perspective, you have something called as key pair and security group. Key pair, I would simply put it in two liners, is more like a certificate exchange or keys via which you identify that, hey, I have the permission to access this EC2 instance. And when you provide a key, which is nothing but like a PAM file, based on that PAM file, the EC2 verifies it with the private key that is stored at this location in EC2 instance. You provide a public file, EC2 verify that public file with the private file stored at this location instance. If that match, you are allowed to log in into the instance. Okay. So to log into your instance, you must specify the private key when you connect to the instance. Okay. So this is as simple as that. You not to worry about it, but for your understanding that you understand what exactly is a PAM file or key pair, these are general terms which you will see. We'll do the same thing when you will launch a EC2 instance. Security group is nothing but like a firewall. Now, firewall is a very generic term where everyone understands. If you have the permission from firewall, you will be able to access it. If you don't have the permission, you will not be able to access it. Similarly, in AWS, that's called as a security group. If you in security group, there are two ways. There are two kinds of traffic: inbound, outbound. Inbound is nothing but the entry. Outbound is more like an exit. Inbound, for a very simple example, like if you're hosting a website, now when someone is trying to hit amazon.in, that is an inbound request, that you're making a request to an amazon.in server. You get the entire catalog as a response, that is an outbound. So those are the security group, what you have, the inbound and the outbound counters. So that is as simple as you need to remember around it. Okay. And again, Security group is kind of in stateless. Let's say if I block port 22, that doesn't mean that the outbound will also be blocked. What I mean is, let's say I block 22 that no one should be allowed to access my application within the server. That doesn't mean the outbound will be blocked automatically. So do remember that you have to be ensured about the inbound and the outbound traffic around it. There are a couple of secure standard, I would say, SSH, so certain of ports, what you need to remember, like port 22, 21, 22, 80, 443, 338. This is just for remember. More majorly, I would say the port which you deal in and out in your life is port 22. When you're working on Ubuntu or any sort of Linux machine to get into the server, you use port 22. 80 and 443, like any sorts of web traffic, like how we have done the static website where you ping via browser, you need 80 or 443. 80 is for HTTP, 443 is for HTTPS. And similarly, I'd spoken about the 22 for SSH. If you're using a Windows machine, then you need 3389. This is as simple, you don't need to mug up around it. These are the 4 or 5 ports what you commonly need in and out. There are various other ports what you can use. Like ideally, there are 65536 ports have been there in the entire world, in the entire industry, but this is a common one you can use in and out in your life. Now, there are other security, there are certain rules for AWS security groups, right? Do remember, security groups is the very best practices you need to observe. If you want to secure, you hear in and out, it got compromised, it got hacked, it got DDoS attack. The root cause is the negligence of the security. That's a prime thing. Now, that negligence is at multiple levels. We want to avoid and we want to learn the things in a very basic way. And for EC2 instance, the first layer of negligence is of not configuring the right inbound rule. And what are the different things you need to consider, right? I'm not going to deeply go in a very detail here, but a couple of things I want to highlight is, for example, very simple of it, as I mentioned about the 2 kinds of rules, inbound and outbound. Inbound, for very simple, if you have a very sensitive application, how are you going to ensure it? You want to ensure that that's not publicly available. There are only few people who can access that. Very simple of it. Please ensure that whatever port it's running, it's port 80, 443, or let's say any custom port is there. Please filter it to your own custom IP addresses or my IP addresses. That I will show you that demo very recently. Don't open it to 0.0.0, which is like publicly available. Anyone can do it. If you just try to compare this with the S3 bucket, when I was working on the S3 static website, also I told you very clearly, hey, please watch out. Don't make the bucket public. Anyone can access it without your understanding. Similarly is the concept here. If you open the traffic on 0.0, that means you're publicly opening up. Anyone can access anything as a web server. You don't have any control to it. From the traffic standpoint, then if you have other things like you can have if you have a kind of website which is login based, you have MFA, then you have all the controls. But there are other ways people still can hack your application by SQL injections and all of the stuff. The very foundational gate is the security of the firewall security group rules. Please ensure that, right? Which is more of the negligence, I would say, most of the time. I personally have seen like almost 6 to 7 incidents at my end, at my workplace, which is just because of negligence of opening up the ports. So please ensure that this is a very common mistake everyone does in a life. Please have a habit of filtering out the traffic on my IP address as always, or the custom IP ranges. So as simple, if we go through and read it out, security group should avoid having larger range of ports. This increases the attack surface and increases the vulnerability of your EC2 instance. Limit the outbound access from the ports to specific the ports of the destination, which we just spoke about it. It is good to maintain one security group for SSH to your instance, since SSH is a very critical. While working on DB database instance such as RDS doesn't allow unrestricted access to the RDS due to the increase in the risk of brute force login attack and all that stuff. As I mentioned, don't try to attack. Even if you have login and all, there are various other ways you can do it. Always do ensure delete the unused security group. Now, you would say how this is very important, right? If you're not attaching a security group, how this is very important. When you work in a big companies, like there are 500, 600 people are working in and out on AWS, there's a high probability people start reusing the security groups. And you don't know it, right? Unless you follow proper tracking and a very clean hygiene way, that each person has own security groups, which I've seen very rare scenarios of it. People reuse a security group. It might be possible. He's in a rush. He just used the existing security group, and that existing security group is available to entire universe. And at the end, when there is some attack and you reach out to him, hey, why did you use it? Hey, I don't know. That security group was already there. So instead of creating a new, I reuse the same one. Those are the incidents also I've seen in the life. So that's why it's very important that you delete the unsecurity group, because sometimes it's very possible that for kind of troubleshooting, for kind of accessibility testing and other reasons, you do have to open up the range to a wider possible stuff. But those kinds of things are very rarest scenario, and you should not allow that scenario to be used by some other people for some other sensitive workload. So that's why it is very important that you delete the unused security group. And then last one is restrict the people to modify the security groups or creation of other stuff using IAM policies. Like that's the best way. I know you're restricting the way of flexibility of people working on the cloud. But another way, if people are not listening, you are working on an admin level and people are not listening you, then there are certain ways under EC2 permissions, you can remove the capability of making the changes to security group or creating a new security group. I've personally also done it. You can also do the same thing via IAM policies. So do remember, this is a very critical section of when it comes to security part of it. Now, the next one is the EBS. For sure, EC2, as I mentioned about the storage, compute, you always have, like when you talk about this compute, you get certain storage to it. Now you get 1 GB storage, you get like 1 terabytes of storage. EBS is like an elastic block storage, that also like a volume, as simple as like a network, kind of a drive which you attach to your EC2 instance on the cloud, is simple as that kind of a Seagate hard disk what you attach to your laptop or to your desktop. Couple of things I would say it is very important for you to understand is this point. It is locked to one availability zone only. What that means is when you're launching an EC2 instance, you're launching an EBS along with it. That EBS can be only accessible to one availability zone. It cannot be available to another data center. It's specific to the data center. That's one. Two, if if an EBS is already attached to an EC2 instance, you cannot detach it unless you stop an EC2 instance. That means you cannot share the EBS with two instances simultaneously. It is possible, you can stop it, you can detach it, and then you can attach it. But it is can be attached to only one instance at a given point of time. It can be only available to one availability zone. It cannot be attached to USB. It's only available in one availability zone. 3, even though you create an EBS while launching an EC2 instance, there are certain parameters or attributes, delete or termination and all of this stuff, via which you can preserve your EBS even if you're deleting an EC2 instance. Very simple of it. Generally speaking, when you do a machine learning training and all, you download a larger data set on your storage. Something went wrong and your EC2 got crashed. Now, it is possible, right? You can terminate the entire thing and do from scratch. But you have downloaded 100 GB of data on our storage. You will always feel, hey, can I reuse this? Rather than starting from scratch. Yes, you can do it when you're deleting that or terminating that EC2 instance. Please ensure delete on termination attribute is disabled for the volume. So only EC2 get deleted. The volume is there. So whenever you launch a new EC2, you attach this volume and then you can use it. So this way you don't have to download the data again or do anything processing. You can just you can continue from it. So these are the 3 important things just remember. It's available in only one availability zone. It can be attached to only one EC2 at a given point of time. And you can preserve the EBS from a compliance for continuing your work, even though when you're terminating the EC2 instance. Okay. Next is an EFS. EFS is the best apple-to-apple comparison. It's a network file storage. What we have in our traditional on-prem system. Now, in the EBS, as I mentioned to you, it is only available to one availability zone. It is only available to one EC2 instance. There is someone who can ask me, what about LAN, right? In the LAN, you have some shared storage which can be accessed by like 10, 15 computers. You can download the software. You can store the data in the central, which can be used by everyone. If I have that use case, then what I can do? Exactly. If you have that use case, you can use EFS, which is Elastic File Storage. This way, you can ensure that elastic file storage can be mounted by multiple EC2 instances within that same region across multiple availability zones at a simultaneously. If you see this diagram here, you will see there are two EC2 instances what you have in 2A, 2C, as well as 2B. All three can attach to the same EFS at the simultaneous time and across different availability zones. So this way, if you want to create, let's say, LAN kind of a setup on AWS, then you can use EFS. One of the this is one of the difference based on how we can access and how we can mount. There is one more difference what is there in terms of the availability. Now it is very simple, right? You get a file which is plugged very locally to your machine versus you get a file from a network. For sure, the performance will differ. The things which is locally available will be much more faster available. The things which is available within the network will take some time. So that's the second point when it comes to EBS versus EFS. Any data which you need from EBS will be faster available if the data is already there in the EBS store. If you want to get any data from EFS, it will be slower compared to EBS. It's not that completely slow. It's much more faster than your on-prem, but a bit slower compared to the EBS time. So do remember that point also. So that's about the EFS time. Now, next step is the AWS AMI. Now, it's very important, right? Most of the time, what people generally do, if I go back to the previous examples, or if I have not spoken about it, generally people, how they do is they want to reduce the launch time. Like, let's say you have an EC2 instance, you do the same thing again and again. You deploy Python, you deploy Java, you deploy R, you deploy Eclipse, PyCharm, and everything. Now, this server you need again and again for all the different users. Let's say in your company, you deployed it for one user A. Now there are 10 other users are coming into it. Next day, 20 users are coming into it. Third day, 30 users are coming into it. You will get fed up. What the heck is going on? Like every day I'm keep doing the same thing, right? Launch an EC2 instance, install all this environment, install this, all the workbench and everything, and give it to them. It feels quite bored. There exactly, you can use something called as Amazon Machine Image. What you can do is you can pack everything. Whatever you need, you can pack everything and you can create something called as a golden EMI. Golden AMI is your own custom AMI, which can comes by default with the software which you have packaged in that golden AMI, and you don't have to do this again and again. As simple of it, right? Everything is based off an AMI. Now, we will, in the next step, when we will be launching a demo, we will be seeing that whenever the EC2 instance is coming up, it by default comes with an Linux, Amazon Linux, which we call as Linux 2. That is also an AMI which is provided by AWS. Now, what's the significance of that AMI? It provides me an Amazon secured CentOS Linux out of the box. Similarly, there are other things have been also provided by Marketplace and all, where you will see that software, what you need, the vendor already installed that software, provides you. You just have to go and spin it up, use it, pay for it, terminate it as and when you want. So that's how AMI significantly reduce the entire deployment time of it. And AWS has come up with a service called as EC2 Image Builder for this entire process. Now it becomes very important. When you're working in a very secure and compliant manner, you need to do this kinds of hardening, OS level hardening. Like generally what we do, antivirus, patching and all other stuff, those kinds of hardening you need to do. And then you need to keep a track, you need to maintain, validate, you need to test, right? Before you make it publicly available to anyone, you need to do that entire cycle. That's how EC2 AMI help. And this is the entire flow, right? This is, let's say, this is your base image. You build everything, like you patch it, you install the application, you do hardening and all other stuff. Then you validate it, then you test it, and then finally you create a golden EMI. So this is an entire significant process, a simplified process which is available as a part of EC2 Image Builder, and you don't have to do anything. It's been taken care of, that stuff, and you can schedule it, you can have it, and this is a free service. That's the best thing of it. So that's about AMI. Do remember there are three types of AMI what AWS provides or available in AWS. Public AMI. Public AMI is nothing but Amazon Linux. I will walk you through the AWS console, which is publicly available. Your own custom AMI. Now, publicly AMI also means certain times community also provides certain AMI at free of cost, open source. That is also public AMI. Your own AMI. Your own EMI is like, for example, I make an EMI for my own company, Quantify, and I only want to access by the Quantify folks. That is a private AMI. The third is the marketplace. Marketplace is more like a professional setup. Some software is available professionally, which I pack it up, and that particular vendor, let's say, for example, Quantify has their own software. I take an EC2 instance, I put that, deploy that software in it, I package it, and then I sell it as a marketplace. And any person who is there can help potentially buy that, leverage it, and pay the cost for it. So that's about the three kinds of AMI that has been provided. Also, one important thing you need to remember outside to is AMI are built for a specific region, but you can copy that across the regions. So let's say, for example, when you build an AMI, that AMI will be accessible within, let's say you're building an AP South in Mumbai, it will be primarily there in AP South, but with certain settings, you can copy that image to another region. By default, it's not globally available, but you can explicitly, you can provide that to across the regions. So here are the three things. What is an AMI? A way to simplify the entire installation process. AWS provides EC2 image builder service as an entire pipeline to simplify that process. EC2 AWS provides three kinds of different AMI functionalities: public, private, and marketplace AMI. Fourth, AMI are built for a specific region, but with explicit permission, you can copy it across the region. So that's all the 4 points when it comes to the AMI part of it. Next are the advanced concepts. So next 2 slides are more about talking about the advanced enterprise, about the auto-scaling. I'll try to simplify this. This is a very advanced detail is there. I'll try to simplify both of this functionality. If you don't know it, please let me know. And I'll try to make this more simple for you guys as far as possible. So what is auto-scaling, right? The name itself suggests automatically scaling. Auto-scaling, automatically scaling. As I given an example that if I have a kind of a promotion or kind of an event, I cannot predict the traffic on that particular web server or on that particular application. It may be even 100, it may be even 1,000, it may be even 10,000. There exactly, it's very important that any server or any application which you launch as an auto-scaling. You are not being charged for the auto-scaling as a service, but you are charged for the number of servers that has been deployed by the auto-scaling, which is what you need, right? That, okay, if I have like 10 users, you scale it down to, let's say, 1 server or 2 server. If there are 10 million users or 1 crore, you scale it up to hundreds of it. So that's how it is activity. So the goal of auto scaling, very simple: scale out, which means increase; scale in, which means compress, which means decrease. And there are certain policies which are there, like how do you scale out, scale in, and other stuff. And this has been automatically taken care by based on certain parameters. The scale out, scale in is like an event which has been taken care on certain specific parameter based approach. Now, which is very important is to understand this scaling strategy. And this falls under the, if you go and understand the cloud computing in my first presentation, I've used something called as elastic. AWS or cloud computing provide elastic offering. This is the best example of elasticity. I scale it out however I want, up to my, based on the parameter I've given. I scale it down once my requirement is done. It's very flexible, very elastic in nature. So this about the best example of elastic scaling. Now, the scaling strategies we talk about. One is the manual scaling, which you manually update. You manually define what can be my minimum parameter and my maximum parameter. The second is a dynamic scaling. Generally speaking, in most of the scenarios, you will leverage to use dynamic scaling because you cannot predict and there is no fixed time when the traffic will come. It may be in the mid of the night, as a simple example. So there exactly, it's very important that you define the dynamic scaling, and dynamic scaling is always event driven. Like for example, there are 3 types of it: simple scaling, target scaling, and schedule scaling. Very simple scaling is like a kind of a CPU utilization. Let's say a user is going in Amazon.in and ordering something. Now, if there is Prime Day and all, for sure, the processing and all those things will be much more higher. Similarly, if I translate in the backend, the CPU will be higher. Based on the CPU, I have to scale out my server. This is as simple as that. Example, if my CPU utilization is more than 70%, add 2 more units. If it is less than 30%, remove 1. This is a simple example of it. You can make it more little complicated is around by having this time frame to it. If it is 70% for 5 minutes, then you add 2 units. If it is less than 30 minutes or 15 minutes, then you remove one. So those kinds of additional things or tweak also you can do here. The second one is a target tracking scale. I want an average CPU to stay around 40%. But on an average, if my is 40%, then you have those kinds of an event. And the last is like an alarm. I know that I am going to shoot an event, and because of that event, let's say for example, there is some news which is going to be like a kind of a scam or some kind of a fire. I know that very well. As in when I'm going to hit this news publicly available, there are millions of users who are going to hit my website. And I know the period. The period is going to be fixed. It's going to be between Monday to, let's say, Friday to Monday. That is a schedule that I scale up my infrastructure from Friday to Monday, and I have that server up and running up to that. And automatically by Monday, I know that that impact will go down and I reduce it back under. Very simple. Let's say you have election results, right? Election results will be out, let's say, Monday morning. I know very well that by Monday, 7 a.m. in the morning, I can scale it up and I can keep it having running up to, let's say, Wednesday end of the day. Post that, I know that the elections result will be completely done and people, the kind of traffic will reduce significantly. So those kinds of period, like from Monday morning to Wednesday evening, I can have that kind of a higher bandwidth. Post that, it can automatically do it. So those kinds of 3 high level have been done. Here is a detail explain what I have given, what, where, and when, to simply understand it, right? So there is a launch configuration, what you define. There is a launch configuration, what you define. What means is what server you should, when you say auto scaling, right? AWS cannot simply come up and launch a server. You have to define the configuration to it, the launch template. That, okay, hey, whenever there is a requirement, you launch this kinds of a server, this type of server with this key pair, this security group, this IAM role and other stuff. The configuration of the server. Where? Which location, right? That, okay, where you need to launch this, in which subnet, what capacity you need to launch, where exactly you need to attach it, to which load balancer you need to attach it, and all of the details. Where is the location of where you want to deploy? And when? Like when you want to deploy, which we understand, okay, based on certain scaling strategy, either manual, dynamic, and all, you take an event. So these are the 3 things: what, where, and when. If you remember this is pretty simple. However, you're in most complex application you're working in IT industry, if you remember this slide, this will cover your entire auto scaling thing, what you need, and like almost 60 to 70% from the documentation. What, where, and when. Next is the load balancer. The load balancer, as a name suggests, elastic load balancer. Load balancer, most of the time, generally people also do a load balancing on EC2 instance and other stuff. But personally, I've seen load balancer always work in conjunction with auto scaling. As and when I scale my server, I also need to load balance my traffic, so it's not hitting the same server again and again. It doesn't make sense, right? Previously, it was hitting one server because that's only available. Now, if I have scaled it out, let's say from 1 server to 10 server, the traffic should also distribute to 10 server. So that's how the load balancer is responsible to do. Based on the number of servers available behind the scene under auto scaling, it distributes the traffic in a round robin manner. Round robin manner, that means, let's say I have 3 servers and I have 9 requests. So first server will get first request, second server second, third server will get third, fourth server will again be first, fifth will go to second, and sixth will go to the third server. That kind of round robin, it will go in that sequence. So do remember that kind of a stuff. And again, load balance is a very common term. You can also do it on-prem, but the things are still the same, that if you do it on your own, you need to manage it, you need to operationalize it, maintain it, and all other stuff, right? So those kinds of critical things have been there. And in AWS, it is very simple. You just need to provide a couple of knobs to it. And certain of configuration, you're good to go. And do remember that around it, that in case of AWS, it provides 3 different kinds of load balancer: application load balancer, network load balancer, and classical load balancer. We won't go in detail about each of these load balancers, but this is the 3 load balancers that have been provided by the AWS. And always do remember, load balancer work in conjunction with auto scaling to distribute the traffic across all the servers that are available as a part of the auto scaling configuration. Here you can see from the diagram standpoint. Okay. Now we will go and we'll do a simple demo of EC2. Okay. So I'll switch back to my console and then I'll go and take the questions. So this is my AWS console. What I will do is, I'm just waiting for my EC2 to get launched. Okay, I'll click on launch EC2 instance. So I'm just clicking on the launch wizard. Okay, so in the AMI, if you remember, I mentioned about my AMI. Since it's a new account, there is not AWS Marketplace AMI, which is the professional way. Community AMI. This community AMI includes everything which is provided by AWS or some other part, open source fund. So these are the remember about the stuff. This is the AWS AMI Linux 2, which is provided. We'll click on next. Do remember, right? There are 6 main steps. Choose an AMI, choose an instance type, configuration, storage, tags, security group, and review. So first, I've select Amazon Linux. Second, I'm selecting the family under family. This is my family, which is general purpose. Second, I'm selecting the compute, which is T2 micro. And here are the different configuration which is provided in a T2 micro. Do remember that I'm only using for demo purpose. That's why I'm using the free tier eligible one. But if you're doing in a production one, please use the high-end server. I'll go and I'll configure the next. Now, this is the settings what it provides. You can define the spot instance and other stuff. I don't want to do any spot and all. I'll simply do network. I'll keep all of the settings as is. Do remember, you can also provide IAM role here if you want to allow your EC2 instance to interact with other AWS services. I just want to need to host the same AWS website in an EC2 instance now. So that's one very simple of it. You can also provide your user data section here. So whatever action which you want to do, let's say after launching EC2 instance, you want to deploy a PHP server, you want to run a PHP code in it, or any sort of web server, you can provide the entire user data, entire code here itself, and AWS will take care of that server. The advantage is once the server is up and running, you don't have to do anything. Your application, your server is already up and running with the application which you want to do. Generally, in cloud formation, this is very important that you not only launch your resources, but you also launch a configuration of that resources. So once the cloud formation is done, it's like a package, everything is available. So with this functionality, you can do it. We'll also do the same thing. I'll close here. Again, need not to worry about it. I'll share the scripts with you guys so you can try it at your end. First, let's give me a quick walkthrough. What I'm doing is I'm installing an PHP, I'm doing an HTTPD web server I'm launching around it, certain permissions I'm giving around it. And finally, this is my HTML, a PHP file wrapped in an HTML, which is what I'm going to run. What is going to print is instance ID and availability zone. Okay. So this is a bash script, simple, which I'm just copying here. And I'm pasting it here. Next, I'm adding a storage, the standard one. I'm adding a name. I think I'm giving a web server. And the same tag will be replicated across my instance, my web volume, and my network interface. Next, do remember, as I mentioned initially also, here also the same warning is, rule with source 000, allow all IP addresses to access your instance. We recommend setting secured security group rules to allow access from known IP addresses only. As I mentioned, I always use my own IP addresses, which is allowed to my own IP address. This is my review page, and finally I'll go launch. I already have a keypad. Let's say this is exactly the SSH key which I was talking to you. This is like a public key or the private key exchange kind of an stuff, which can help you to secure the login within your EC2 instance. If you don't have it, you can create new and you can do it. Since I already have it, I will reuse the same one and I have acknowledged it and I'll click on launch instance. So now you will see that I'll click on the view instance. And this instance is running. We'll wait for a few minutes for this instance to be up and running. And then we will see. Now, if you select this around, the same configuration which we have provided, you will see the same other stuff. It's running state, it's doing all of the stuff. Let me see is this up and running already? All right. So what you can do is you can take this here, public DNS. One second. So here you go. So this is what we were doing. If I go back to my code, what I was doing, instance ID and my availability zone. These are the two things which I was printing. So now in your front of you, I have not done any sorts of SSH. SSH means I have not entered in the EC2 instance, nor I have done any sort of a thing. Simply I've given a user data section, and by default, it's giving me the EC2 instance and availability zone, which you can also validate from here. The instance ID at the end is F29, and the AP South one. So this is about the demo about hosting the static website or a simple website on EC2 instance, the same exercise what we have done on the S3. Now I'll take a pause here and let me go back and see is there any sorts of questions what you have for me. Okay, so I think Prakash has a, can we use EFS instead of EFS as a root volume for EC2 instance? Okay, so for example, for EFS and for EBS as a root volume, no. So I think for the root volume is like a master volume, which is already in EBS. You can attach as an external or extended mount volume as an EFS to it. Okay, the next one what we have is around here. That's one. The second one is there a way to configure different launch templates within an auto-scaling group for the same? No, the launch template is immutable in nature. It's a very good question. The launch template is very immutable. Let's say for a very simple, this is personally also I have experience when I was working into it. Let's say I've launched a kind of an template. I've already defined a launch template. The auto scaling is in action. Now, after that, I understand that, okay, hey, I need to make the change into the instance type from M4 large to M4 X large because the application is not working as expected. In order to do that, I have to make the changes and create another clone of that auto launch template and create a new launch template to it and map and attach and do all of the stuff. But do ensure launch template is immutable. Launch configuration, you can attach the same template and you can take care of that stuff. It's an immutable object around it. So I see, I think those are the two questions what we have here. Okay, let me jump to the last section of today's session is around the IAM rules. The IAM rules is very important for you guys to understand, right? So in the demo also, if you don't know about the user data and all the stuff, you want to try this out, you can go, if you're like for the first time you're launching EC2 instance, you can replicate the same thing and you will get the output like how I'm getting from the browser. But please ensure the security is not mapped to 000. Now we are in the security, we are in the IAM rules, okay? IAM services. IAM is very important for you guys to understand it, right? In case of IAM is like the way you can provide the permissions to AWS services. Now, there are two entities what you want to learn. Here is the user, IAM users and IAM group. IAM users are nothing but one human user. Like if I am a kind of I have my own identity, which is Sanchit. I have my own IAM user, if you just now, which I'm accessing in my AWS console, which is mapped to only me. This credential is not shared with anyone, not with any other person. That's a best practices. Each human is mapped to one IAM user. Now I belong to an administrator as a group. In the group, there are multiple such IAM users are there. So in simple example, this is an individual users, individual identity. This is an IAM group where you create a group and under group, you can have multiple people around it. Okay. So this is around the IAM users and group. It's always the best practice that you create an IAM group and delegate the permission on the group level rather than individual. Let's say if you have thousands of IAM users, you cannot sit down and keep giving the permissions on an individual level. That's one. Two, you also need to remember IAM is a global service. So let's say, for example, if I give myself an administrator permission, it's not just applicable to AP South, I mean Mumbai region or North Virginia region or California region. It's across all the regions of AWS. It's a global service. Okay, so these are the IAM users and group. Second, IAM permissions. So when we talk about the IAM permissions, this is the policy in the form of a JSON, which we define, right? Similarly, like IAM permission is like you need to provide a permission to a stuff. So IAM permission is like you can assign a JSON document which is called like a policy to either an individual. So if I go back, here, this is a permission, right? This is like in a JSON format which you can attach to a user or you can attach to a group. You can do both the ways, right? You can attach it to a user or you can attach to a group. And this policy is, the format of this policy is IAM statements. So there are certain optional attributes what you have, and within that statement, you see a different policies, statements, like IAM statements. Now, IAM statements is the exact permission which you're giving. So in this screenshot, you will see S3 list all buckets, S3 get all the buckets. So those kinds of different permissions you are giving, try to make as granular as possible, and also AWS highly emphasize and works in a form of a list privilege principle. Do remember this term, LPP, list privilege principle. That simply means don't give more permission than a user need. Try to always start from very refined access. Don't go in a reverse way that I'll give open access, then I will cut it short. Always go from a back to front, I mean from bottom to top. Always start from small and then you start scaling around as you do. Today, if you want to, let's say tomorrow you need EC2, but today you only need Lambda, just start with Lambda. When you reach to EC2, then only you give that permission based on the requirement. So always start from what you need with a bare minimum permission. That's called as list privilege principle. Next important is around the IAM policies. So in case of IAM policies, what you have is around the policies that consist of like around you have the policy version, identifier and statement. The important thing is to include the by default standard here. Then you have the statement, and within the statement, you have this other attributes around it, out of which the only three things important is effect, principle, action, and resources. Okay, need not to worry about it. By default, this is a standard thing which is come by AWS in the console itself. You can do it. We just want to highlight this is how the policy comprises. Okay. Next is a password policy. I'll quickly go through this. These are the standard practices which we do. I mean, outside the AWS also. Like the default password policies are 8 character long, 128 character long. There are certain kinds of things that are uppercase, lowercase, special characters. Like this is the standard you would have seen. There's nothing new. The same thing what AWS provides. In AWS, it also provides some custom things. Like you can define your own password strength. You can have your password expiration. You can expire and require reset around it by administrator. Change your own password and prevent password reuse. I would say this is not something very new of it. This same thing which you see with your email inboxes also, like whatever you're using around it, Outlook or Gmail. These are standard settings which have been provided that you can define all those kinds of stuff. The next way, very important in the previous slide, the previous section also we talk about it. There are 3 ways you can access any service of AWS via AWS console, via CLI, or via SDK. Now, console, we have already gone through it. CLI is more like a command line interface, and SDK is via Python, any sorts of programming language like Python, Java, Ruby, .NET. Those is an SDK, software development toolkit. So when you're working on CLI and you're working on SDK, one of the important, from console, it's simple, like you have your own username and password, which you have understood around it. That's same whether you need to ensure around that it's protected and all. When you're working with CLI and SDK, there are 2 ways you can do it. One is via access key secret key. One is via IAM role. So this is how you can generate the access key secret key. And IAM roles is what you attach to any services or to yourself, like how I attach an IAM role to myself as an administrator, and I can do anything based on that role. IAM role is fine. Try to leverage IAM role as far as possible for each and everything, whether you're working with AWS resources or you're giving any sorts of groups and all. Do remember, try to minimize the use of access key and secret key. Use it as and when you need. That's one. In case if you need access key and secret key, let's say if you want to access from your laptop any sorts of services, you have to land up using access key secret key. Do ensure you handle it with proper care. You timely rotate it and avoid sharing it because it is very, very secret credentials. It's just like you're opening up your access key, secret key is equivalent to your username and password. Even if you don't give a username and password to anyone, you just give the access key, secret key to anyone, they can do all the operations what you can do it from the console, which also includes spinning up 10,000s of EC2 instance on behalf of you. So avoid ensuring putting your access key, secret key in things like GitHub, Bitbucket, publicly, any sorts of website, it is not at all a best practices to place any sorts of credentials like how you do it for the username. You never put your credit card number, right? Credit card number and PIN anywhere in the public. Similarly, understand it's the same example with the access key and secret key. Couple of the best practices and guidelines, I would say. I will not try to go deep dive, but the same thing what we have spoken around. Please ensure that your root account, when you launch a new account, the first default user which you deploy is called as the root account. The main super administrator, right? In a database language, we call it as the super administrator, the root account. Avoid using the access key, secret key. Please save the username and password because that is like a universal access. If that gets compromised, that's the worst day of your life. You're not able to get into it unless you reach out to AWS or your account representation. 2, create individual IAM users for each of the users and attach it to the group. Align the permission to the group. Have a strong password permission, MFA, list privileges, roles, never give access key, secret key, rotate your credentials, remove unnecessary credentials, have the proper conditions in your security, and have a credential audit reports to ensure working in and out. This is a couple of best practices which you see if you're working in already in IT industry and your company is using cloud. You will see these are the things already being taken care. One of the things I want to touch base is enforce multi-factor authentication. You certain times you see and you receive an OTP. This is a common thing now when you're working with a bank or when you're working with any sort of banking website or any sorts of debit card or any making transaction online, you get a notification. OTP. You enter OTP and based after the username password, you enter OTP and then you can perform a transaction. Similarly, is an example of multi-factor, like multiple factors or way of authenticating a user, not just relying on username and password. So that's simple as that. Now that can be multiple ways. You can have a virtual thing like Google Authenticator, Auth Authenticator. There are multiple such applications are available. Or you can have a hardware device, an RSA hardware device where also you can do it. Ubix key and all of the stuff, those kinds of an hardware device also you can have to do it. 19% people uses the virtual device. It's very portable. It can be installed in your application, whether Android and iOS, and you can carry it as well with your mobile, so you don't have to worry about it. Right. So next, what we will be doing is we'll go with a quick demo of our IAM user. The demo is very simple. I'm not going to do any more complex demo. I'll try to make it a very simple demo here. How to create an IAM user, attach to a group, attach to a permission, and try to access it. So first, step 1, I'll create a group. Okay, so here what you have is around the add user. I will name the user as demo. Now you can create another user also. I'll name it as a demo user. Please give a meaningful name so you can identify it. I'm just giving it for now. Programmatically access enable access key secret key for your AWS API, CLI, SDK, and other development toolkit. As I mentioned, I don't need that. I will use the password. With the password, you can allow the user to change the password. I don't need to do that for now. I'm doing a custom password. Let's say give a very simple password. By default, I'm getting a password does not conform to the account password policy. So what I'll do is I'll give a secure password. Okay. I'll click next. Now here it gives me create a group option. I'll click on create a group. Okay, admin. Now, as I mentioned, you can attach the policy on a user or you can attach a policy on a group. I've created a group name. I'm attaching a policy of administrator and create a group. So now next time, when you have any user, and if I click next, create user. By default, you see the user is created, the URL is this, you can download the CSV or you can share the template, okay? This is as simple as creating a user. I'll show you, I'll create another user. Okay, so it got loaded. And the last activity for sure, it's never, because I've just created it. I'll create another one. I'm creating demo 2 with the same. Your custom password, disable it. Next. Now you can see by default, I don't need to create a group. I directly attach a group. On this group, the permission is already attached. So I'm not attaching any additional permission. I'm just creating a new user and placing this user in this particular group, and that's all. I don't have to do anything else here to take care of it. So do remember it, that if you once already have attached a permission on the group, you don't have to do anything else. By default, everything will be taken care from here, right? And now if you try to log in, let's say I'm not completing the entire creation. Now if you try to log into the user and log into the permission, right, the URL and all, this is how you can. Now if I go to the access management, I'll take the URL from here. Let's say I go to the incognito mode. I'm just copying this account name and I'm entering the new URL, right? It's the URL of the account what I have just created a new user. Okay, here you can see I've created a new user. What I will do is I will do a kind of a demo. We'll go and we'll see what is the username is there. Demo user, okay? Here you go. So this is as simple as creating a new admin user. I'm creating a user, creating a group, attaching a permission to it, and then accessing the application. Now you can also you can reset the password. Let's say if I click here, if I click on this particular user, the administrator can reset the password, can enable the MFA and all of the stuff, right? So this is how you are creating a new user as simple in 4 or 5 clicks. And once the console is done, we'll see how we can do the MFA and all of the stuff. So now this is you have, right? If you go in the security credentials, you will see the different kinds of. There is no access key, secret keys there. There is none of the signing URL is, or none of the other things, MFA and all. You can click on here, manage. You can attach a virtual hardware, UBIC key kind of a stuff. And once you click on stuff, you will also get the list of the authenticator, and this way you can enable the MFA device on your mobile application, virtual device. Okay. So this is as simple of creating an IAM user. What I'll do, I'll quickly go and delete the IAM user. Please ensure that you create an IAM user with a proper permission and proper security with MFA enabled as always. Okay, so this is how you delete the IAM user. So anyone who has the access will be terminated, will be forced out from your account, and they will not able to access the resources. So this is about the IAM. The last section is around the billing and the cost management. I got a couple of questions last time about billing, cost management, and other stuff. We'll try to quickly touch base into 3 things. I'll fast track this session. These are the 3 things what we have. The estimator. You do not have to worry about in detail. This is a very high level you should be knowing as an FYI for your information. In AWS, it's not always that you don't get an upfront cost. Here, if you try to play with this calculator, you can get kind of a web application or a GUI where you can estimate the cost of your consumption. Let's say I'm going to launch in 10 EC2 instances in future for a month of, let's say, September with T2 micro. What will be my cost with, let's say, 8 GB volume and all? I can get an upfront estimator cost with help of the pricing calculator. That can help me to set my budget for that particular month. It is very important that you estimate the cost, and it's very, I will say, this is very important when you are working with any of the customer, where you need to help them to give an estimation that what will be their cost for the next month. This kinds of utility help you a lot. The next one is from a tracking standpoint. So previously what we have learned as an estimation, here is a tracking. So as I went through, if I go here, until this load, In AWS, from a tracking standpoint, you get the billing dashboard. From that dashboard, you can track, right? So here there is a screenshot where you can see different tracks, that what is around your consumption from last 3 months by default, which are the different services what you're consuming currently, month to date, those kinds of stuff you can do. Additionally, this view is available as a part of the billing and cost management dashboard. From there itself, you can also get different reports like budget, cost explorer, and cost usage and report. Those are the things. What exactly are those things we'll learn in the upcoming things. So this is I'm not very active user. This is a very new account. So you would see that, okay, the cost is 00 INR. But from this view, you can see all of the stuff. And as I was talking about, from here, you can see the cost and the usage report. You can see the cost allocation tags, the budget reports, and those kinds of other things, which can help you from tracking and monitoring your entire consumption of AWS. And again, please ensure, as we go forward, you will see the more granular and more proactive way also of doing the things. So alarms, right? It's always important when you're working on certain workloads, you need to get certain kinds of alarms, some alerts. Hey, you're crossing a budget which you've set for this month, which is $50. You're crossing that $50. Those kinds of alarms you can set up. There are 2 ways you can set up a billing alarm. One is via billing alarm via CloudWatch. Second is leveraging in AWS budget services. I'll give you the difference. Rather than going deep into it, I'll give you the difference. AWS billing alarm is very, I would say, simpler way of doing it. I define if my budget goes about $50, you just send me an alarm. It will go and send me an alarm. As simple as that. Without giving me any visibility where exactly my $50 is going, how my $50 are going, or can I set different other budgets also, right? So this is as simple as my estimated overall, on my overall billing, not estimated, on my overall billing. It not uses the projection based usage. It is my actual cost. Okay, so do remember that about the billing. How it works is, right, billing is again the global level. It's not regional. So the entire data of your billing is stored in the US North Virginia region, and from there it's been taken care of. So even though if I'm working in, let's say, Mumbai region, my billing data is been in US North Virginia for when you're working on the CloudWatch billing alarm, and from there it's taken care. That's one way. Second is a more sophisticated way of doing a budget. Now, budget not only provide the functionality of giving you or generating the alerts based on the stuff, but it can also give you current other stuff, right? The current versus current that is already in there. It can also give the forecast, right? What I'm going to do, I'm already spent $50. Now, I'm not getting a budget, a kind of an intimation that, hey guys, the way you're consuming it, you're going to run away your budget in next 7 days. Or this is how you're standing compared to your actual budget. So if you see the screenshot, there you will see, right, there is a budgeted value, there is a forecasted. So current versus budgeted, which is the actual versus budgeted, and forecasted versus budgeted. But okay, let's say you are in week 1 of September, for an example, you're consuming 20% of your budget, but by end of the September, you will consider 120% of your budget, which is also very important that you proactively understand where you're going to stand at the end of the month. Along with that, budget also provides other usage reports like cost we spoken about, usage, reservation, and saving plans. Those are the other offerings what AWS provides to track or reduce the cost and discounted offerings. If you want to understand how your budgets looks like for those stuff also, there also AWS helps you to get around it. So budget is not only providing you from terms of the current and actual, but it also helps you to get the forecasted, which is in the ways the CloudWatch is not working. Okay, so that's around the cost tracking 3 things: the billing dashboard, the billing alarm via CloudWatch, and the AWS budget services. You can just skip the billing alarm. Mostly 2 things are being used: the dashboard and the budget. The next is a cost explorer. Now, someone can ask me that, okay, hey, I'm not worried about my billing overall value. It may be $50, but I want to understand each and every service wise. What is the cost of my S3? What is the cost of my EC2 instance? What is the cost of my Lambda? There exactly you can use Cost Explorer. Cost Explorer can help you to analyze your pattern for next 3 months, like the futuric use of the next 3 months, as well as preserve the historic 13 months of data. So it not only help you to look back your 13 months of consumption, also help you to predict the next 3 months of your consumption. So those are the beauty of the Cost Explorer. And along with that, it also provides you the granular view. So if you see here, it's not only giving the granular view service wise, but it can also give, each day wise what service consumption you have done, that kind of granular report you are getting with the Cost Explorer. Similarly, in the cost tracking itself, you can also have something called as a cost allocation tags. How I can help you to differentiate this is, let's say in the Cost Explorer, I help you, I spoke on about that, okay, hey, you can get the services wise the cost. Now, let's say you're working in a very organization, MNC, right? Multinational organization, where you have different departments. You have HR, you have finance, you have legals, you have IT. Now you want to understand the cost of Lambda, which has been used by all of this department. How are you going to do it? Right? That's more important also, because when you budget it, when you're working in an IT industry, you always budget it on a department level. IT will have its own budget. Legals will have its own budget. HR will have its own budget, right? Those kinds of budgeting, what you do on the department wise. Now, you can't keep just going different AWS accounts for everyone, because that is very difficult. You need to manage and all. Where exactly cost allocation tags help you. You can define the tags for each of the department. And when you're launching these AWS services, let's say when you're running the Lambda, we see a tag. There exactly you can define the tags. And the same tag you can define in the billing. And this way you can get the different cost, like the CSV, you can get a different CSV by AWS itself in S3, which can give you this granular view around it. So that's how you can also use the cost allocation tag to get one level down of granularity details. Along with that cost allocation tag, you can also get a cost usage report, where if you need to get that, okay, hey, from an EC2 perspective, what was my charges, let's say in S3. If I talk about S3, Cost Explorer will tell you in your S3, you spend $100. Now, if I want to understand that, okay, hey, where exactly, how did I spend $100 in S3? Which APIs, what I have done, what was the cost for each of the APIs? Those kinds of very granular API views you can get in the case of the cost usage and report. There exactly AWS uploads your CSV reports by default once you enable to a particular S3 bucket where you define it. And you can do the following things. You can deliver the report to S3. You can update the report twice in a day, and create and retrieve and deliver via API references. So those are the things what you can do with the cost usage report once you enable that out. The last section is around the support plan. Right now, AWS ecosystem is very wide. There are multiple places where you need the help of AWS. So they provide the different support plans. Now the support plans includes basic, which is like a by default comes out of the box. You don't have to pay for it, and it can help you to resolve any sorts of issues and everything. There are three other stuffs that are developer, business, and enterprise. I will not go very deep into it, but I've included all the stuff, right? And just to remember, it's like a normal support cost. The basic one is free. The kind of SLA is also, it's around 24 hours to 48 hours has been there. As you go to developer, which is like a paid one, like a 29, greater of 29, or 3% of your monthly charges, greater of 100, or 10% of your monthly charges, greater of 15,000 or monthly charges. There are different pricing to it. You get a more and more reduced SLA. So if I talk about enterprise, which I personally use it in my professional account, we have enterprise support. There we see is the SLA is like almost in a few hours, like 3 to 4 hours, we can get any sorts of production failure help from AWS, from technical as well as any sorts of support help. So those kinds of things you will see, right? So I've included all those kinds of functionality on a high level. Like in basic, you can get the basic stuff. So if you're doing, let's say your POC learning, you don't need to worry about the developer, business, and enterprise. Basic would suffice. But if you're working on a, let's say, production scale, mission critical workload, then you need to choose the right one, which is always preferable as business. And if you have like an enterprise, that's awesome. But business is more preferable, and then followed by enterprise. Developers are for more people, like in the dev environment, all where you need the technical guidance and help from them. So these are the couple of supports what we have, and I've added each and every one. The majority, I would say, functionality changes as you go from basic to enterprise. The major thing which you want to understand, as I was talking about, was around the severity. SLA, what we talk about, is the response time. If you see in the developer, it's 24 hours, between 12 to 24 hours. In case of business, it's between 1 hour to 24 hours based on the different types of SLA. In case of enterprise, it's between 4 hours to 15 hours. Between 4 hours to 15 hours based on the type of the issue or type of the support ticket what you create, AWS responds you back. So these are the different functionalities of what you have in this support plan. And that's all what we have for today's session. So today's session was very exhaustive with a couple of other demos and all. So we have learned about the S3, the S3 bucket and object. We learned about the EC2 instance, the different pricing option, which you should elect or what, the kind of a demo around it. Then we went through the IAM rule, that what is the exact IAM roles, how to create IAM roles and other stuff. At the last, we went and deep dive into the billing, the different functionality of estimating, tracking, and as well as kind of you have different reports about billing. Those kinds of different understanding what we had, and the final at the last we have done through the usage reports. So this was in today's session. I'll now switch back and see if you guys have any questions so we can address the questions. Okay, so let me go through that. I think I left it up to, so I think there's one question, how to create a static IP for multiple instances, is that possible? So static IP for multiple instances you can possible. So there are two ways. First, if I understand your question, you can create a static IP, and static IP can be attached to, it's like a volume. You can only attach to one instance at a given time. But let's say once you stop that instance or you deallocate, deregister it, deallocate it from that instance, deassociate it, what is the right term in AWS, you can attach to another instance, but you cannot have same static IP being leveraged by two EC2 instances with the same network interface. That's one. If an answer your question is like how to create static IP address for multiple instances, if you're looking from perspective of creating multiples of it, you can use things like Boto3 Python like code, where you can write the same logic of creating it in a loop based on the number of instances. You can call an API of creating a static IP and you can attach it. That's a way. From a console, you can create only one IP and you can do it multiple times. You can repeat the same section and you can attach it. So that's where you can look forward to that the same stuff.
All right, I guess there are no more questions. So yeah, that was indeed an amazing session, Sanchit, and I personally really enjoyed it. So yeah, I would really thank you for sparing your precious time for us and delivering such an informative session and being a part of our AWS Cloud Practitioner Training. I'm sure that students really enjoyed and learned a lot from this session. I'm certain that the knowledge helped them grow, understand the subjects and its concept with utmost simplicity, accuracy, and clarity. I would also like to thank all the learners who gather here to learn and make the most out of this beautiful opportunities. And your presence really made the evening successful. Stay tuned for updates regarding the time and date of the next session. Yeah, that's all. Thank you. And really, again, thank you, Sanchit, for being here.
Thank you so much, and I'm already there part of the Slack channel of Dehradun. So if you feel any help, any need, I will upload all the materials to GitHub, and I'll share the link with the organizers. But if you feel any help, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, as well as you can DM me on Slack. I'm always helpful. I will have my own SLA to respond to you, but I'll respond you that you will get it within 24 hours. That I can assure. So please feel free to reach out. It's very important for you guys to go through the certification, and I'm always there to help you guys. So don't hesitate to reach out to me on the Slack channel.
Thank you so much, Sanchit. Once again, have a nice day ahead.
Thank you. You two guys have a great day. Thank you so much.